Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation, Natel's Air Conditioning and Heating, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home, and Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Ash. Over the next hour, well, it is football time, right? We'll be talking a lot of football. New Orleans Saints football, LSU Tiger football, Tulane Greenway football, all for you tonight on Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest, well, returning guests for both of these guys on the panel, and got to tell you what, a lot of knowledge with these two guys. Rick Gaille of SportsNola.com and Rene Nadeau of SportsNola.com, but I got them listed at SportsNola.com, but it's so much more. And we'll start with you, Rene. First of all, welcome, guys. Thanks for coming down once again. And Rene, tell the folks a little bit about SportsNola.com and all the other things that you're involved in.
Well, thank you, Eric. Great to be here. And in fact, yes, SportsNola.com, great outlet if you want to read about high school and college football, the Saints, everything else. Also work for Fox, do high school football, do some college football as well. And we have a prep recruiting show that we'll talk about a little bit that we'll be doing this year, third year going into it, and it's really proud of it at WHNO Channel 20. And we have the kids on site talk to the recruits, where they're going, what they're looking at. Yes. We have a legend on that played high school football in this area and who played in the NFL. And also do some stuff for Sirius Radio, WFA and CBS Radio for any sporting event, Saints, anything going on in New Orleans. So, you know, keeps me
staying busy.
Staying busy.
That's right. Rick Gaille with us. Rick, again, thanks for coming back down and tell us a little bit about all the things you're involved in.
It's a pleasure being here, Eric, as always. Once again, with SportsNola.com, writing blogs on football analysis, a little different angle than most people take. And it is a great website for the true sports fan in whatever sport there is. There's a lot of great stuff there. I work with WGSO Radio and Ken Trahan specifically. We're starting the 20th season of Ken Trahan's original Prep Football Report, the first Friday in September. That'll be all the way through the season. Also covering games with him, broadcasting games with him. Saturday morning, the Three Tailgaters show with Ken and Ed Daniels. Beginning my second year with that and having a great time with that. And as Rene mentioned, the new venture, something I'm really excited about with WHNO, the Prep Recruiting Insider. Get to try my hand at being a studio host for a change and see how that works, because Rene, as the insider, really does a great job with prep football recruiting, talking to the coaches that are involved with recruits, the recruits themselves. As Rene mentioned, a legend. We're also going to have a segment, especially for parents and players, on football safety. Thibodeau Regional looks like they're going to be involved with that. And we hope that comes to fruition, but it's going to be predominantly on coaching ideas, safety in football, treatment, and the like, but a segment that will especially be interesting to the parents of the players, because it's going to be more than just regurgitating news, but actually to produce something that everybody can get some benefit from.
Well, a lot of the stuff that you guys are involved in. I really appreciate you guys coming down again tonight. Let's start off, Saints getting ready for their first preseason game. You know, guys, leading up to the black and gold scrimmage, this team seemed to be a little bit injury-free in camp. You know, when you look around the rest of the camps around the NFL, have had some severe injuries, guys that have been knocked out for the season. Some guys have been knocked out for their careers. But the Saints had been pretty much unscathed going into that black and gold scrimmage. Coming out of that black and gold scrimmage, man, this week, it's like a hospital up at Greenbrier right now, because they got a situation where they're dealing with a lot of injuries right now. I'll ask this question first, and I often wondered about this when they went with the new CBA. In your guys' opinion, being around as long as you have, is there a situation now, because of the lack of contact that we're seeing in an NFL camp, you know, even leading up when you're talking about OTAs, you're talking about mini camp, etc., that a player really doesn't get a chance to harden their body, really to prepare themselves for the season. You know, a little bit of contact in the black gold scrimmage, not a lot. But we've started to see some of these nagging injuries start to creep up now as you get into the second, third, fourth week of camp. Rene, I'll take you first. Is that something that the NFL is having to deal with this CBA now because it's changed and they've really backed off on how much you can work these players?
Well, you know, I don't know if you want to say it toughens you up, but you know, I guess back in the day, and I guess Rick and I go back to old school, and you know, when I was playing it, you hit all the time. But you can kind of do it in excess a little bit. But you know, when you do pull it back a little bit, you know, when you do hit and all, you maybe open yourself up for some injuries.
Right.
A lot of things are happening, though, Eric, with pulls and things like that. And sometimes that is just, that's not all, but a lot of it has to do with just warming up and doing things and having your body. But the injuries do come around. I mean, when you got guys that size, that fast, injuries are going to happen. There's just no way of avoiding it.
So you think it's a byproduct of bigger, stronger, faster athletes?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that has a lot to do. There's a lot of collisions, and the size and speed and athleticism of the player now is so much better than it was, you know, 15, 20, 30 years ago.
Rick, what can you add to that? You've obviously been a coach for a long time. You've been on the inside and out of this. What are your thoughts? The change in the CBA and really kind of backing off on a player's ability to be able to really kind of get ready for that season in terms of getting their body ready.
And it's not so much toughening up their body. What it has a lot to do is recovering from contact. You've got to train your body not just to be strong and fit and flexible. You've got to train your body to recover from contact. And that's what goes first when you look at a player maturing and starting his way downhill in his career. It takes him longer and longer to recover after Sunday, so that he's missing a practice here or 2 practices there, and that gets lengthened throughout the season because your ability to recover is so important to playing the game and for longevity. So the players really don't have the opportunity to train their bodies out of all the training that they do, and it's year-round now.
Yes.
And that's part of the circumstance, too, that perhaps they don't give their bodies a chance to recover from the season before they start really preparing for the next season. So much of conditioning has to do with recovery as well as the activity and the practice going on, and players don't have, because of the restrictions in contact, really don't train their body how to recover from impact.
You know, it's pretty amazing because we've kind of seen this over the last couple seasons more and more. I mean, you look just after the black and gold scrimmage, obviously Breeze with his problem with the oblique. You've got obviously some other players that have been dealing with a lot of injuries. Victor Butler was in a boot. You got a lot of players right now that again, look, it's week 1 of the preseason. Nobody's panicking at this point in terms of getting guys on the field, but it is a concern when you start to get these nagging injuries that they don't linger into the into the regular season.
And the thing is, you know, everybody's going to have injuries. There's no way to avoid it. You're going to have contact. You're going to have pulls. I mean, Victor Butler, you know, was out for the season last year in a non-contact drill. You just don't want to have anything serious, and you want to kind of temper it a little bit and keep an eye on somebody like a Victor Butler. I'm sure they're watching him after what happened last year, and that type of thing. But it's just about lady luck too. Sometimes, you know, things happen, and if Lady Luck smiles on you, and you know, you get through the season almost injury-free. No one's going to be injury-free, but basically injury-free. That, you know, sometimes you have to be lucky. But as Rick said, you have to take care of your body, and it has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, and the Saints right now, who have an excellent medical staff. I think that's one of the advantages that they have in the league, not only the training staff, but the coordination between that training staff and the medical staff. They're taking a very conservative approach right now. If it comes down to right now taping an ankle as opposed to putting it in a boot, they're going to put it in a boot right now because they want to be as close as possible to full strength when the season starts, because it's a very long season, and so right now they're going to take a much more conservative approach. When you look at Jairus Byrd and what they've done with his back, they took a little more aggressive approach, but long term it's going to be conservative because Buffalo chose to treat the symptoms rather than going in and finding out what the real problem was and trying to cure the symptoms. They were just treating the pain, and so they took a little more aggressive approach with that, but in the long run it's going to pay off for him. So it's a conservative approach right now to injuries. Would Drew Brees take it's going to be close to 2 weeks, I think, from the time that he hurt it to the time he starts playing again. Would he take 2 weeks in the regular season? No. He wouldn't. He probably wouldn't miss a snap in practice because of it. But right now, let's give him some downtime. Let's make sure that it heals as much as possible. Let's take the conservative approach in treatment right now, and that's going to yield some greater numbers right now on the injury list.
Well, that's really kind of the thing you look at with two of the players that are two of the oldest players on this team, and it's about the ability to come back and recover from injury, especially when you get into your 30s. And two of those guys. Number one, Brees talking about wanting to play to 45. Look, I have no doubt that in his mind he believes he can play until he's 45. But again, you cannot outrun Father Time, and he is in great shape, better than most. Keeps his body in great shape year round. But ultimately, it's about being able, when you are injured, to be able to come back and recover from those injuries.
Absolutely.
That's why I've been really interested to kind of watch how Brees has really kind of recovering from this particular injury, just a muscle pull, not something really big, but this is something that obviously down the stretch you got to kind of watch. What are your thoughts about Brees' comments about wanting to play to 45? Obviously, it's wishful thinking, but it is about the ability to come back from injury, isn't it?
Well, I hope I'm on TV until I'm 85, but but the thing is with your body, like Rick said, injuries when you get hurt, in a game on a Sunday, when guys start coming back on a Wednesday and Thursday, then your body's telling you, it's talking to you, telling you, it's just injuries have, or rather the pounding has taken its toll. But the thing is, neither Sean Payton or Drew Brees are going to tell you. Sean Payton can't make those throws. He used to make those deep outs and things like this, or those tight window throws. In the next year or two, perhaps his arm will fail him a little bit, and he won't be able to make the throws quite like he used to make a year or two ago. Only he will know that. Only he will never tell you that. But the throws he used to, the risky kind of throws, he'll start maybe pulling back on those kind of things, or maybe the distance and stuff like that. But his throws are tight windows and timing and things like that. And there's no way in the world he'll continue at the pace he is right now until he's 45. He'll have to adjust somewhere. Once he gets the next 2 or 3 years, 45, that's a long way off.
Well, that is a long way off.
Yeah, he still has 14 anchors in his shoulder that Dr. James Andrews put in. That's what's going to go first. He's going to be as little as quarterbacks get hit now, even though he got hit more last year than he had in the past. But still, when you look back in the day, quarterbacks got hit a lot more. But the anchors are going to give way before any other thing goes through. So I don't think they can last 10 years, and that's going to be an issue.
What about Champ Bailey? Again, Saints are very, very secretive when it comes to injuries. They don't have to tell us, so they won't tell us. But again, there was some concern earlier in the week that maybe Champ Bailey, no one that was at camp had saw him. So there was some thoughts that maybe he's decided that he's going to hang it up. Now we find out that at least some have speculated that he got rolled up in one of the drills, and he's got obviously a lower leg problem at this point. Again, speculation on my part at this point. But what about Champ Bailey? That's another thing. How quickly can he come back? Rene, you just said it, from a Sunday injury to a Wednesday when you start talking about his age.
And Rick and I have talked about this with other people too. Champ Bailey is going to be like a DH in baseball. That's what he's going to be. He's going to be a guy that makes a play of things like this, but to be a starter and a full-time starter and things and special teams, that's not going to happen. But he'll be a guy that will be a DH. Will shed some wisdom and things like that. He'll make a play when they need him. It might be a matchup or something they need that Rob Ryan. But other than that, he won't be there. I'd be extremely shocked if he was there in an opening snap, a lockdown with a Calvin Johnson or something like that. I can't see that.
That's not going to be his role.
No.
It can't be, and couldn't be from the very beginning. And we've both not only talked about it, but I've written about that as well. And that's a good way to put it as a DH. He's got to be a specialist, but he's got to be a productive player. You're not a mentor, and you hear this over and over again. That's going to be one of my rants one of these days. You're only a mentor in the NFL if you can play.
Right.
You show them how to do it, and don't just tell them. They got coaches to do that stuff. And just say it out loud. Defensive back, lower leg injury, doesn't sound good. So let's hope that he can get well for the season, but he's had problems with feet. He's had problems with lower legs the last couple of years. Those two things don't add up real well.
866-3200 is the phone number. Let's head to the phone lines. Ryan is in Mid-City. Ryan, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
How y'all doing? How you doing?
Right.
I got one statement and one question. Y'all pretty much answered what I was thinking about, but I want to talk about LSU. I think LSU needs to go find a stand-up quarterback. I don't think LSU need no more, running quarterback, because it look like it just don't really work in the SEC. And I got a question of why wouldn't the Saints go get a barrel from LSU? Why would you go get a Champ Bailey and a Bird and wouldn't go get a barrel from LSU? I just think that was just ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? So I'll just stop talking and keep listening.
Right. Thank you for the phone call. Let's go with the quarterback situation first at LSU. A dual quarterback system now with two guys that obviously can run and pass. Rene, what do you think about the Tigers, the direction they're going? They're not going with that pro-style quarterback anymore.
No, and you look at who they're recruiting and who's coming in 15 and 16 in the recruiting years, and those are mobile quarterbacks, pretty much like the same guys you got now. Anthony Jennings is the guy who I would be extremely surprised if he doesn't take the first snap against Wisconsin unless an injury involved. But Brandon Harris is a guy who could be, if he develops in the 4th, 5th, or 6th game, you may see his reps begin to increase a little bit. And he's talented. And I've said this on the show, that Brandon Harris reminds me so much of Geno Smith, who I've seen many, many times at West Virginia. The way he winds up, his delivery, size, everything else. So he reminds me a lot like Geno Smith during his days with the Mountaineers. And I think he's got a great career. But Anthony Jennings, you will not see a alternating quarterback situation. I think Anthony Jennings, though, he'll get his opportunity, and Brandon Harris, they'll bring him along slowly. Because if Brandon Harris comes in and happens to throw a couple interceptions, boy, his confidence is going to go this way. And they want to guard against that.
Harris is a throwing quarterback. That happens to be athletic.
Yes.
Very live arm. When you hear the term that he can spin it, he could spin it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're standing and you're throwing the ball over your head, you hear the ball cut through the wind as it's going over your head. So he's got a live arm, but he just happens to be athletic on top of it. I absolutely agree with you that Jennings should be well ahead of him, but Harris at some point is going to be the guy. The quarterback onus this year is on Cam Cameron. I was disappointed in the bowl game last year because they had time to plot and plan and come up with a specific game plan for Jennings to be able to execute, much like LSU in the Peach Bowl 7 years ago with Jefferson at quarterback that did extraordinarily well with a specialized game plan for him. That didn't happen this past bowl game, and I was very disappointed in that. The onus in the beginning of this season, you see this, and this throughout the country, schools that have inexperienced quarterbacks, so they're in the middle of the pack in their conferences because of that position. Can he develop a system of play that the quarterbacks can handle as they're learning how to be SEC quarterbacks, that the team can still move the football with a great offensive line, great running backs, inexperienced but talented receivers? Can he come up with a system of play that LSU can still move the football, still be effective while the quarterbacks are learning the ball? The burden of proof is going to be very much on Cam Cameron this year, even more than the young quarterbacks.
Guys, can you guys talk about Lamine Barrow at all? I mean, obviously, the different positions. You're talking about guys that went out and Saints got into free agency. Barrow, obviously, a guy that got drafted. What type of pro do you think he'll be?
Lamine Barrow has really come a long, long way. And he was not and he'll tell you, he wasn't a college-ready linebacker when he came from John Ehret. But boy, he's worked very, very hard. You remember he wore number 18 last year. He had respect of the LSU Tigers teammates. But he's going to have a chance, and he's got good size, good skill. He's an outside linebacker, and he'll have a chance in the NFL. I think he has the chance to play quite a few years in the NFL.
Yeah, and the Saints brought in Champ Bailey and Jairus Byrd because they need to improve in the turnover situation, and that's two guys that have made a living on forcing turnovers. Turnovers you can't structure a defense to force turnovers. You've got to have playmakers to be able to do that. The Saints have a bunch of very good defenders, but not very many playmakers when it came right down to it. They weren't explosive enough offensively. We've talked about that. Didn't force turnovers on defense. So Bailey has been brought in to be a specialized player, to get that attitude turned around, to get to the football, force turnovers, and that's what Byrd does as good, really, as almost any safety in the league, is turning the ball over. So that's why they have those two there, and they were very good pickups.
Back to the phone lines we go. Tori is in Houma. Tori, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Tori, you with us?
Yeah, I'm with you.
How you doing, Tori? Your question?
All right. Yeah, I want to know, do y'all, with the addition of Brandon Cooks and Kenny Styles or Graham, Meacham, and Colston, do y'all think that this is the best receiving core Breeze had in the last 5 years?
Tori, thank you for the phone call. Guys, can you compare and contrast since Breeze has been here? Maybe the fastest receiving core he's ever had, right?
Oh yeah. With Stills and Cooks is fast a hiccup, man.
Oh, yeah.
He's the real deal. He's explosive, and he's going to have such an impact. Not only as a receiver on speed sweeps, he could be a return guy. And, when you shrink that field, Rick, as you know, man, and you make the offense go 70, 60 yards instead of 80 yards, that's a big difference. And Cooks has the skills to change the field and be a playmaker. And, he's a guy can stretch the field, too, as a receiver.
Yeah, we mentioned explosiveness just a little while ago. The Saints needed to be more explosive offensively. Teams would make them take the long route. And so the Saints had a lot of yards, but when you looked at points per yard, they were in the middle of the pack, scoring as opposed to yardage, because they had long fields, because weren't forcing turnovers, weren't getting returns in the kicking game. Well, Brandon Cooks and Stills, for that matter, both will help improve the Saints in the return game. And if you just pick up 7 extra yards on kick return average, that's one less play that the offense has to score. It's the difference between touchdowns and field goals. Cooks, explosive. You could throw it to him short and he could take it the route. That's what the Saints didn't have.
Yes.
They had a pretty decent intermediate and deeper passing game, but they didn't have a single player, Darren Sproles included, that you could throw it to just beyond the line of scrimmage and he could take it to the house. Would make good plays out of it, but not scores out of it. So the Saints became much more explosive. Now the shorter passing game can become even more dynamic than it has before. The middle of the field will have a chance to be emptied with those speed type of guys in the game. And they're not just fast guys, they're football players who happen to be fast. Great skills and just really solid football players, tough guys that'll block you, that'll help their teammates. So those were great additions for the Saints, the receiving core overall. And it'll be interesting to see if Robert Meacham can hang on.
Yes.
With the amount of speed that they have on the field. Where does his niche happen to come in? What's going to happen with Joe Morgan? That's going to be extraordinarily interesting as well, because I think they're only going to keep 5, because usually the 4th wide receiver is Graham when you get right down to sometimes the 3rd one for that matter. And not many of them play in the kicking game. So it'll be a dynamic crew and just what I think the doctor ordered.
Guys, what about the question from Tori? When you look back at the history of this team under Peyton, is this the best receiving core they've ever had on paper?
On paper, it is. Yes, it is. And results. I mean, Jimmy Graham is a guy that's 99 catches a couple years ago. He's such an explosive kind of guy that's going to attract attention. And now the defense may not be the focus on just him with a Brandon Cooks and a Stills, who's really, he's coming on. He's really coming on. Don't know how Tune's going to do. Yes. Joe Morgan is going to have to contribute on the special teams, or he may not be on his team. Right. And so in Meacham, I tell you what, the thing about Meacham, he may not be the explosive, long, deep threat that he was, although he can get deep. He's a great blocker.
Yes, he is.
And that's one thing.
And a trust factor there as well. With
absolutely.
Right. Yes. Which I think is a point of contention going into the season. And I've talked about it on my radio show. We've talked about it a little bit here. There's been such a turnover in terms of the wide receiving core. When you look at Drew Brees and you look at the Saints offense, in a lot of cases, you've got to be at a certain place at a certain time.
Absolutely.
It's a timing offense. It's why the Saints had so many problems last year with guys unable to get off the jam. Well, you've got some young receivers now. They've got some speed. Well, they have the strength to get off the jam, number one. And then, will they be where they need to be at the time they need to be? And is that trust factor going to be there when Breeze is maybe under a little duress and he lets that ball go? Lance Moore's not there anymore. There are some guys that now he's going to have to learn to trust. Guys, how much of a situation is that going into this season? I mean, obviously there's a learning curve here for both the quarterback and the wide receivers.
It's huge. And that's why the Saints have not been as effective on the road as they've been at home, because their timing is not as effective in the varied conditions that you get on the road as opposed to playing in the Superdome. So that's going to be huge. I think what you could look at in the receiving core overall is to answer this: who is the number one receiver? Every team in the league, you can go say, here's the number one receiver, here's the number one receiver. With the Saints, the number one receiver is the guy who gets open.
Right.
And Breeze gets him the ball. Right. There is no number one receiver. They're all number one. Breeze is the guy that can get it to the open guy. And that says a lot about the quality of the receiving core right there.
Also, the running backs play a big role in that receiving core.
I would agree. I would definitely agree. Best receiving core on paper since 06?
Yes.
Let's go back to the phone lines. Chris is uptown. Chris, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Yes. My question is, do you think the Saints are going to win the Super Bowl this year?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Chris?
Okay.
Do we think the Saints are going to win the Super Bowl?
Yes.
Thank you for the phone call. I would say this, guys. It's a long season. A lot of things can happen with injuries, etc. On paper, I think this is the team that, when you look at the top teams in the league, AFC, NFC, I think on paper they got as good a chance as anybody.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. That right now, a lot of teams have chances. And one of the interesting things that I'm trying to study, which last place team is going to win their division this year? Right. Because there's a last place team somewhere that's going to win their division.
Usually in the NFC South.
Exactly. And they had two last place teams last year, and both of them have improved dramatically in Atlanta and Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is going to be a real threat. But the Saints have done the things in this past offseason that they need to do to compete with Seattle and San Francisco. That's the two teams that you absolutely have to beat. They're the teams that you got to get through to get to the Super Bowl. They've done the things that they could possibly do to give themselves the opportunity to do that.
Rene, what do you think? I mean, again, on paper, looking at it, I mean, this is a long season, as we said. What do you think about this team? Is it a possibility that they could be in the Super Bowl when it's all said and done?
Well, people just automatically assume that defense was good last year. It's going to be as good or better. You assume that. A lot of things have to happen. You're going to plug in Victor Butler. You're going to have new guys. Champ Bailey's coming in there. Jarris Bird. Guys, components. Cam Jordan. Guys are going to have to come back and perform up to the levels last year or better. A lot on that offense. Terron Armstead has kind of solidified that offensive line from left tackle, and from all indications, he's really, really exceeded what the coaches thought he'd be at this point. The center situation is going to be important. I really think Goodwin is going to wind up taking that spot, and because he's got so much experience, and that center spot is so vital to the offensive line. And you got Evans and Grubbs and stuff like that, and Zach Strief. If you got a good offensive line, you don't have a lot of tremendous depth that can step in and you won't miss a beat. But Armstead is a guy that's going to be very interesting because he mans that left tackle, and they feel very comfortable with him now. Mm-hmm. And I think that has been a tremendous get, if you will, because last year at this time they wasn't sure how long it's going to take him to be there and things like that. But he's really grabbed a hole, and he's done a really good job. And so far, everything's working. But when the bullet starts flying, that's when you're going to find out how good he really is.
Guys, and that kind of leads me to my next question. There are still some out there that are questioning whether the Saints have the physicality on this team, on both sides of the ball, to be able to be in the Super Bowl, to get past a Seattle, to get past a San Francisco. I think we saw a little bit more of a physical team in the playoffs last season than we saw maybe earlier in the season. Have they made changes, Rene? Have they grown another year? Will this be a physical team that when they have to run the ball, they can run the ball? When they have to stop the run, they can stop the run?
Well, they do have on paper, they do have the manpower to do that. And they qualify for a team that is physical enough to do that. And I don't mean to jump off your question, but I'll also say this. Things that people are overlooking right now is special teams. And a couple of guys, vital special teams players, is Caduce and Roby. And they're not here anymore. And I tell you what, special teams, boy, that's a very big part of football. People talk about offense and defense. You talk to Greg McMahon and Thomas Morstead and stuff, and you need some guys who can play gunners, as you know, Rick, on defense. On special teams. And if you don't have a good special teams, that is a big problem.
Isn't it where this rookie class could maybe fit in, though?
Well, again, you got to find the right fit. You got to find a guy who is capable of being. You just can't go out there and say, this guy's fast and he can tackle. As you know, you got to have a guy who's got that special team mentality. And as I mentioned, Caduce and Roby, those guys were extremely good at what they did. And they made a living out of being on special teams. And you have to have somebody fill that role, because right now, I know Greg McMahon is looking at somebody who's going to fill the roles that those guys had and did a great job.
Yes. What about the physicality of the team? Have they made enough changes? Have they grown? Have they matured to compete with the more physical teams in the NFL?
Physicality, especially offensively, is so much attitude. And when you looked at Mark Ingram last year in the playoffs, his attitude started carrying over to the rest of the offense. He ran with attitude the last 2 regular season games and the 2 playoff games. And the offensive line really started to pick up that same attitude. The Saints are much more physical at the center position, whether it's Lolito or not, or Goodwin. They're more physical there. You know, Grubbs is physical. That's one of his strong points. Jari Evans is physical. Streif is just coming into his own.
Yeah.
You know, we thought maybe at the beginning of last year that he was on the way out, and it turns out he's one of the best.
They had him
right
on an island all last year, really.
Yeah. Terran Armstead, if they'd have done a better job preparing him last year, that was the one thing that the Saints staff last year did not do a good job of, was prepare him in the first 14 games because they knew they weren't happy with Charles Brown early than against the Rams. And Armstead was only active for 4 of the first 14 games, 14 regular season games. And so it took him about a half to really get used to the speed of the game. So he's going to be very solid there. If that group is together, then they're going to be physical enough in the offensive line. Defensively is a huge question. Can they stop the run consistently? Difference between college football and pro football is this. In college football, if you can't stop the run, the other team's going to keep running the ball.
Oh, yeah.
In the NFL, if you don't stop the run, they're still going to throw the ball. Nobody's going to run the ball 10 times in a row at you. John Jenkins is a huge question mark that has to be answered. He's been hurt, and there are reports that he is not in very good shape either. If he's hurt and out of shape and can't get his turns in the interior part of the line, because the Saints play a lot of 6-man fronts with nickel coverage behind it. They've got to be able to stop the run with 6 players. Jenkins is a huge question mark in being able to stop the run.
Of course, he's out with that pectoral muscle. I'll give you a chance to talk on the physicality before we go to break.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much I can add that Rick hasn't said already, but their defense has played with an attitude, has done well. It's going to be a tough act to follow to be as good as last year or better.
Rene Nadeau, SportsNola.com. Rick Gaille, SportsNola.com. I'm your host, Eric Asher. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll take a quick break. We'll come right back. 866-3200 is the phone number. If you'd like to get involved, don't go anywhere.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation, Natels Air Conditioning and Heating, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home, and Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is literally saving kids' lives.
It's a very special place, friendly place.
To see the kids that they're helping on a daily basis was unbelievable.
Families never receive a bill from St. Jude.
Discoveries made at St. Jude are freely shared.
The hardest cancer cases in the world go to St. Jude. We won't stop until no child dies from cancer.
Join us.
Join us
in supporting Hoops for St. Jude.
Visit stjude.org/hoops to find out how.
He's inside the 5. He's in. Touchdown.
He's gone from really good to great to dominant to overwhelming.
He was the first young player I'd ever offered.
He became the face of Louisiana football.
Watch Road to Stardom, the Leonard Fournette story, Sunday, August 24th at 9 p.m. and Thursday, August 28th at 8 p.m. Only on WLAE, New Orleans Public Television.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guests tonight, Rene Nadeau and Rick Gaille of SportsNola.com. I'm your host, Eric Asher. A lot to talk about. Still need to get to LSU and Tulane, so stand by for that. Guys, great article this week in the Wall Street Journal. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see it, about Rob Ryan and about how he's trying to change the face of defense in the NFL. He's a guy that in this article said that he's looking to play the best 11 players, regardless of position, on that defense. And again, with an emphasis on multiple safeties. We saw a lot of multiple safety positions used last year, and again, upgraded the safety position as well this year. Coach, I'll take you first. You've been in the trenches. You know obviously what type of scheme Rob Ryan's trying to put together. Can you make it in today's NFL by saying, you know what, I'm going to buck the trend. I'm going to go in a different direction and make sure I got my top 11 guys on the field. That's more of a basketball thing than maybe a football thing, but my top 11 guys are going to be on the field at one time.
That's going back to high school. I could guarantee you that one thing we did at St. James especially, when it was a critical time, we were going to have the 11 best players on the field, regardless of who they were. If they're an offensive starter, defensive starter, whatever, if we're going to go down, we're going down with our 11 best. The 3 safety concept is nothing new. That's not where Rob Ryan or the Ryan family, because Rex Ryan's been wanting to do that for years. That's not revolutionary. Greg Williams did that in 2000. I remember Roman Harper, I think, led the team in sacks this year.
Right.
He wasn't coming from the middle of the field. All right, they were playing a lot
almost
of nickel.
kind of a quasi linebacker. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And so they've been playing a lot of 3 safety defenses throughout the year. But here's how the Ryans have changed the concept, and that's in player evaluation. 5 years ago, you never, ever, ever would have drafted a safety in the first round. Safeties have become specialized positions. And now you're evaluating safeties different so that nickel and dime safeties, or nickel and dime corners, slot corners, whatever you want to call them, are becoming primary positions. And they're taking people with specialized skill sets to play those positions. 5 years ago, you'd have taken your third corner and automatically made him the nickelback instead of your first nickelback. They were moving corners to those positions, and now they're getting safeties with enough skill, specifically coming out of college because of spread offenses and people having to cover space at those positions and still be able to defend the run, that they're getting specialized people to play those safety positions. Playing 3 or even 4 safeties when you play dime is nothing new. People have been doing that for years. It's in player development, player evaluation, player acquisition, player development, that the real revolution is taking place at that position. And now, just like you never used to draft guards in the first round either, we realize how important those people are now. You just move the tackle down there back in the day, which to us is fairly recent. but those 2 positions, guard in the NFL being high draft choices now, drafting safeties primarily to be nickel and dime type of players, that's what's really revolutionary.
Rene, you played the game at a high level. Obviously, you're an analyst for a long, long time. Your thoughts on Rob Ryan's, philosophy on defense now?
Well, I'm sure Rick will probably agree with this. I don't know, but you got to be strong in the middle. You've got to be strong in the middle, and that's what your middle linebacker, your safety, your nose guy, your Jenkins, as you said, But you got to be strong in the middle, and that's what the Saints have done well in strength. They got with Vaccaro and Bird. You got Lofton has done a great job, so they've done a good job with manning the positions that are important. And I think that regardless of what else they may do and put, 6 DBs or 5 linebackers, whatever it may be, you're always going to be strong in the middle. And that's where your strength is going to be.
And let me add something to that. If you diagram the defenses, Steve Spagnuolo's defenses and Rob Ryan's defenses, just with X's and O's, you couldn't tell one from the other. A lot of similarities in we're talking about 2-dimensional objects. Now, how you use the players within that and how you teach them is what separates the 2 people. And the Ryan family as a whole, and Rob Ryan may be the best I've ever seen at evaluating a player and putting them into positions that they can do, giving them tasks that they can do. You find out what a player can do. Don't ask them to do what they can't do. Let them do what they can do, and that's why he gets a lot of input from the players. They say he's a player coach because he's always asking them, how do you feel about this? How do you think about that? He'll be the ultimate decision maker, but he's going to do his darndest. He does a fantastic job. It's something I fully appreciate in putting players in positions that they can play and designing things that they can actually execute.
Well, look what they've done just this season. They bring in Marcus Ball, who's kind of almost a linebacker type at the safety position. You re-sign Raphael Bush, who again is a thumper, but it has pretty decent range. You've got a guy in Vaccaro who can really play the cornerback position if you need to, but again is physical enough to be up on the line of scrimmage. And now you got a guy in Bird who again has great range and can roam. And as you mentioned, Coach, and also Rene, he's a guy that again is a turnover machine. I think he leans more toward the safeties than maybe even the corners. If he can get 2 big lockdown guys on the outside, he'll go with as many safeties as he can and maybe discard a linebacker or 2.
And if Keenan Lewis and Patrick Robinson can step up, boy, that's going to be the solution right there, because he can play those guys. And Raphael Bush too, he stepped up and he was a bonus. But boy, what a great special teams guy he is.
Yes. Right.
And that's where he's certainly cut his teeth on special teams.
Guys, this is when you start looking at this team now. Talk about the weaknesses and the strengths. Again, this is going into the St. Louis game, first game of the year. On paper, where do you think this team is, Rene?
In regard to where they need to be, or wins and losses?
Well, when you look at the weaknesses and the strengths of this team going in, I mean, is there a weakness at the along the offensive line? Is there a strength along the defensive line? What do you think the strength of this team is? What do you think they need some work?
Obviously, I mean, a quarterback is Drew Brees. When you got Drew Brees, it all starts with that. You got some skill at wide receiver. Certainly skill to get you to the next level in the NFL. The offensive line, the only problem is the offensive line. You don't have a lot of depth there, and injuries. You got a good, solid running back core. You don't have the guy, but you got a good core of running backs. Be it Thomas and Mark Ingram, and so you got a good core there. Cadet, who knows if he's going to step up and be another guy, but. You're strong everywhere. Obviously, your safeties are a tremendous strength with the additions that you have this year, but everywhere else is good. Cam Jordan is a Pro Bowl type guy. Akeem Hicks, he's off the charts now. He is really. You can see how much he's progressed, and he has become a dominating a type of defensive lineman. So that defensive line with Jenkins and with Bunkley playing full speed, that is a strength right there.
My questions are, can the Saints run the ball when they want to run the ball? Not when they have to, but when they want to run the ball, can they or will they? Will they call enough runs? Right. That could be a big question. And can they stop the run with 6 players? Because when you're talking about being able to play nickel or even dime defenses, which is more than 60% of the time, forget about this 3-4 business. They're not a 3-4 team only on paper. They play a lot of nickel, a lot of dime, a lot of 4-2 nickel, 4-1 dime. Can they defend the run with 6 players? If they can defend the run with 6 players instead of a front 7, they can defend the run with 6, then the Saints defense can be effective. But that's going to be a question. Are other teams going to be patient enough to run the ball at the Saints and make them play run defense? Because out of all the things they do, that's probably where they're the weakest. And in the kicking game, can they gain, not break even in the kicking game, can they gain yardage in the kicking game, shorten the other team's returns, increase their own, and get some big net benefit in the kicking game?
I'm going to be interested to see, with all the speed they have on the field now, again, look, the willingness to run the football and also the ability to bring back shock and awe. Where teams have to try to keep up with the Saints and they abandon their game plan. It's something we have not seen over the last couple seasons. Maybe a little bit at home. Definitely haven't seen it on the road. And I'm interested to see now with Cooks in the mix, another year of Kenny Stills, the inability probably to double team a guy like Jimmy Graham now, maybe Nick Toon coming into his own a bit, and of course Kyrie Robinson back there, who is underrated as a pass receiver and a guy that could run between the tackles. How they're going to do. And look, let's face it, Pierre Thomas is going to be a mainstay no matter what. Underrated as a runner, one of the best screen guys in the game. So that's what I'm going to be interested to see going forward. Guys, what are you guys keying on for tomorrow night's game against the Rams?
Oh, wow. I really like exhibition games. I really do.
So do I.
Because you get to see a lot of guys and that type of thing. I'd be interested how they run the ball. At first, and I like to see, guys who are really giving it, and you can tell when guys are giving it all they have, the starters and guys like that. I want to see how Kai Robinson plays. I want to see how Ryan Griffin will play. Obviously, Brandon Cooks, he's going to have a lot of attention. But how the offensive line, comes together, those starting 5, how they block, and if they can keep whoever the quarterback is tomorrow night, if they keep his jersey clean, and if they work together as a cohesive
unit. And we could
unit.
see a lot of backups in that offensive line tomorrow because of some of those nagging injuries, especially at the guard position. Yeah. No doubt about that. Coach, how about you?
AAT. Assignment, alignment, technique. That's what preseason is all about, and that's what I'm looking at in all 3 phases of the game. Do the players know what they're supposed to do? Do they line up in the right place? Something as simple as that. Are they hearing the calls on defense? because all of a sudden with people around, you start thinking different. You start seeing things different. Assignment, alignment, do they play the technique that they're supposed to play? Do they revert back to some of the bad habits? Substitution patterns, especially in the kicking game. Do they have 11 on the field at all times? Nobody having to run off the field at the last minute. Nobody having to run on. Because now with 89 players that they have, that really can be an adventure. Greg McMahon is going to have, it's going to be a thrill a minute with him. He's going to be running around trying to make sure he has the right 11 on the field.
I can't wait to see like Ronald Powell and Vinny Sinceri on special teams.
Special teams.
That's really
as well.
Yes, I can't wait to see those guys because that is going to be their ticket.
Right.
And special teams, see how they cover, see how they block and things like that. So Thomas Morstead told me before that he's got a couple of guys in a comfort zone. It affects his kicking, how's he going to kick and things like that. So you got to have a couple of really guys, good special teams guys on a punting team that you can count on. It affects how you're going to punt, directional or whatever it may be.
Any concern about this bad blood between Greg Williams and the Saints coaching staff? Is that all media hype at this point? Are you worried about putting your starters out there or a starter out there that Greg may go after him? Is it, again, this is Greg's first game back. I'm sure he's got a microscope on him as well. Is that just media hype at this point?
Let me see if I have this right. Greg Williams started the nonsense. Now, Peyton knew about it, didn't stop it. Greg Williams started about it, and when he had a chance, he threw the rest of the people under the bus, and Greg Williams is angry? I don't think so.
Renee?
I can't add anything to that. I don't think you're going to see any shenanigans out of Greg Williams. I really don't. And they may wave to each other, but that's going to be about it.
Guys, let's shift to LSU, ranked 13 in most of the polls. Man, they've lost so many underclassmen to the NFL. Unprecedented the number of underclassmen that they've lost. We talked a little bit about the quarterback position earlier. Let's talk about the running back position now. Obviously, Terrence McGee gets the 18th jersey. The 18th jersey, that's something that obviously is a great honor for him. But you got some young players. You guys watch a lot of high school football. Talk about Fournette and Williams and what they can bring to the table for this team for LSU this year.
Well, Fournette is they're going to keep him and do what he does well and get him out of space, throw the ball to him, let him run. Terrence McGee is a guy who'd be playing in the NFL. Darrell Williams is a guy who kind of came with a chip on his shoulder because he was overlooked and they offered him as an athlete.
That's the kid out of Everett, right?
Out of John Everett. And he's a physical, very physical. He had like 2,000 yards last year, so he's a very physical runner. He's about 6'1", 225, so he's got some good size to him. Good blocker, good team guy, and he knows that he's got to show something. But Kenny Hilliard too. You don't even think about Kenny Hilliard, and right, he'll be playing in the NFL next year. But they are very, very solid at running back, and there's more coming next year. But that running game and the offensive line is one of the best in the country. And I tell you what. LSU averages, this is going to be a great game against Wisconsin. LSU averages a little over 6'5" per offensive starter, 324 pounds per man. Wisconsin counters with almost 6'6" in height and 319 pounds per man. That is going to be a physical running game. And Wisconsin, speaking of running backs, Melvin Gordon, 1,650 yards, 12 touchdowns. LSU's going to have their hands full stopping him. I'm looking at a 37-31 type game. That is going to be a test of both defenses.
Coach, what can you add about the running back position, especially these young players that are coming in?
Deep, talented, can do more than just run the football too. They're good. They're very good in space. They can make people miss as well. And the offensive linemen, the word is coming back to me anyway that they really like the new offensive line coach, especially technique-wise, much more of a technician than Coach Stud was. Right. And so he happens to be coming in at exactly the right time with the talent that they have in the offensive line. At some point, Leonard Fournette's going to be the guy.
Yes.
I mean, we got a bunch of guys that can play in the NFL, and then you've got a star. And as good as the other guys are, and they're terrific, and I've coached against a couple of them, Leonard Fournette is going to be the man at some point or other.
Right. Well, and of course you got that offensive line with experience protecting those two young quarterbacks as well, which is going to help.
And that's going to make them very comfortable because when they get that protection there, they're not going to have as much pressure on them from the defense and things like this. And it'll also help with the running game. Those offensive linemen are going to open some holes and take pressure that they won't have to pass when they don't want to pass. That running game will offer them the opportunity to be a balanced type offense.
What about that young wide receiving core? I mean, not a lot of experience at the wide receiving core, and then you bring in, I mean, just some top athletes that are going to be able to probably assimilate themselves right away into the lineup.
Well, Traven Durrell, is a guy who was the star last year. I know he had a couple of catches. He had a big one against Arkansas. Quindavius Leslie is a guy that they've been waiting to come out, and this might be his coming out party. Malachi Dupree, wow, what skill he has. Trey Quinn, yes. John Deers. It's just a very, very deep, just inexperienced. That's all. But they're very athletic, and they have the ability. It's just you don't know enough about them as college players. But all these guys were highly recruited, high profile type guys, and they just waiting for their chances. And these guys been working. This is not, it's going to be nothing new. They'll obviously get an opportunity to show what they have.
That's why the coordination by Cam Cameron is the critical factor going into the beginning of the season. Does he have the right people in the right place at the right time? Can he drill them enough in the specifics of what they're supposed to do so that the timing is going to be there? Because he's got it at the quarterback position and wide receiver position. He's got a blank slate, yes. And he's the guy with the paintbrush. So much of what they do, the success that they have in the beginning, has got to come from the coordination and teaching of the whole offensive staff, but especially starting off with the planning, implementation, and coordination of Cam Cameron with the young players. Back to the phone lines we go. Ned is in Metairie. Ned, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Yeah, we have LSU obviously has a lot of question marks with this, but we know there's enough talent that eventually the talent's going to come through. But the one position we're going to find out about real soon, same as last year, defensive tackle. This team was average last year at best. They look like they look like there's no super players at defensive tackle, and we're going up against Wisconsin that runs the ball. And we lost a couple of freshmen that they were bringing in this year, one through stupidity and the other one through stupidity.
Ned, thank you for the phone call. Guys, the defensive line, specifically those tackles.
Well, one thing, and Quentin Thomas is number 95, and we've talked, and it's maybe a little soon, but he reminds me at this stage in his career of Benny Logan. Now, I don't know if he'll be that good, but I told him that, and he is a load. And Christian Lakature is going to be a year older, a year better, but Danielle Hunter and Rasco on the outside are going to be really good. And Danielle Hunter, they're going to let him loose this year. He's going to be, I think you'll see a super year out of him. How many sacks? I don't know, but pressure is going to be a lot with Danielle Hunter. And Tashawn Bauer is a guy that I expect a lot of big things out of him. They do have some redshirt freshmen and some freshman defensive tackles coming in. Bain and those guys, Frank Herron. Yes. I think the defensive line is just unproven. But there's a lot of skill there. And the Thomas and Lakature guys, I think LSU fans will know a lot about those two guys by the time the season comes to an end.
Let's hope so, because in what I've seen so far is that in the A gaps, B gaps, and C gaps, LSU is average for a major college football team. They'll be tested early against Wisconsin. But Wisconsin, if you're going to play a good team early on, Wisconsin's the team to play against.
No, that's physical,
to tell you the truth, because they're physical, but LSU has SEC speed, and Wisconsin's got Big Ten speed.
Good litmus
and eventually,
test,
yes. But internally, they got average written all over them as a unit going into the season. And let's hope that as time goes on, because you need too deep at each position in college football, and as we had mentioned earlier, in college football, if you don't stop the run, they're going to keep running the football.
Yes. Troy is in New Orleans East. Troy, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Good evening, guys. How y'all doing?
Troy.
Actually, I'm calling about the quarterback position at LSU. I've heard where they may let Terrence McGee play a little quarterback. Man, if they do that, I don't know if Les Miles has any idea what he has. My daughter went to Carr, and I follow Carr every year. The year they played Franklin in the championship, man, Terrence McGee is a phenomenal quarterback. I mean, I see him do Statue of Liberty, put the ball on his side. I mean, once you go to college, the coach puts you wherever he wants. But he's a natural-born quarterback, and if they give him a chance his senior year to finally play what he can play, Les Miles going to wish you to put him at quarterback a few years ago. So if they just get him the opportunity, I mean, everybody like these young guys, but they're still young without a lot of experience. McGee's got the experience, maybe not in college as a quarterback, but he knows what to do. And if they just give him that opportunity, man, he can play. LSU will be shocked at what they got at the team. And I see he got a chance to wear the number 18 this year.
Yes, he did. Troy, thank you for the phone call. Guys, a little late in McGee's career to put him at the quarterback position?
Well, he's a great athlete. I think he's where he needs to be. He's really developed into an outstanding running back. He'll have a chance to play. He's a third or fourth round kind of guy for the NFL. And he'll definitely play a lot of years, unless injuries. He'll play a lot of years in the NFL.
Everything they've asked him to do so far, he's done and done exceptionally well. He's been their best short yardage runner over the last 2 seasons, really, even though he's not the biggest or bruisingest, another made-up word, type of player, but he finds that little, he could turn himself and finds that little crease, and so he was a great short yardage runner as well. I'm not sure about quarterback, but getting him the football in space is a wise move.
Right.
And his body isn't beat up.
Right. Yep. And look, I'll tell you what, he's been a mentor as well, at least right now, to those young backs. To Marcus and Gentili. Marcus, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Okay, we lost Marcus, which will give us just a couple minutes to talk about Tulane. Guys, I'll just ask, what do you think about Tulane this year? What type of season do you think they'll have?
They'll have a good season. Had a chance to visit with Curtis Johnson, a lot of players today, the media day, and they may not put up the wins and losses, but they could have a better team because of the competition they'll be playing. And, you know, Tulsa, they'll start with Tulsa and Georgia Tech, and they got Duke, and they got, UConn and Houston. And the competition is really going to be tough. And I'm going to tell you, Curtis Johnson said this, a Southeastern game, don't think that's a gimme.
That's not a gimme.
That is not a gimme. And that is going to be one of the toughest games on their schedule. Right. I'm not kidding you.
No,
because what it represents, and they bet this is not a lower level team they're playing against.
Right. Coach?
Good point. Tanner Lee is going to be something interesting to watch because he should be in position to take over the quarterback position. But Nick Montana's not going to stop, and neither is Devin. They're going to be right there. Devin Powell. They're going to be right there competing. So that position's got to become more solid. Offensive line has not been physical enough in the past. Their offensive line has got to be able to come through. And in this case, also defensively, is the defensive line going to be physical enough while still being athletic to play against the spread teams that they're going to have to compete against? Defensive linemen, when you look at the schedule Tulane has, their defensive linemen have not only got to be physical, tough, internal guys, they've got to be able to play in space as well. Right. Rutgers and Duke at Southeastern are much more difficult opponents than they were when they got put on the schedule.
Right. Well, they got some experience on the offensive line. They've lost that experience on the defensive line, so it'll be interesting to see how they kind of mesh going into this season. Good news for the quarterback that they've got a little experience, but as you mentioned, they got to be more physical on both sides of the ball.
Well, they lost Walmsley and they lost Davenport. That was two gaping holes.
Yes.
But look out for this guy, Tanzel Smart, who's a guy out of Scotlandville, and Corey Redwine, a couple of guys that they really have a chance, and they really like them a lot to play in the middle, and the defensive ends, they like him, and Nico Marley. I mean, my goodness,
really
he's I think he might beef up to like 200 pounds, but he plays well beyond his size. And he does a great job. And the defensive backfield,
they got a great secondary.
They have a great secondary, and I mean, they're going to use them all. And they have one of the best secondaries, not only in this area, in the country.
Yes. Coach, about 30 seconds. What can you add?
Yeah. Really love the direction that the football program is going in. Curtis Johnson's doing a terrific job attracting players there, but also teaching them the system and getting them to play to the best of their ability. So really appreciate the direction that the Tulane program is going in. Just hope the schedule's not too much for them this year, but I'm encouraged.
Winning season? Close?
Close. 5, 6 wins right now. It's going to be tough.
It's because of moving up in the conference.
Yeah.
Yes,
they can win 4 or 5 games and be better than last year.
Right.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Tough start right off the bat.
Yes.
Georgia Tech and Southeast.
No doubt. But there's a lot of excitement at Tulane right now. No doubt.
Should be.
Rick Gaille, Rene Nadeau, thanks so much for being part of our panel tonight. And thank you so much for watching. Remember that there is a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night at 10 o'clock on WLAE TV and also Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette. Don't forget, you can also catch me on the radio, 990 AM WGSO, weekdays 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. And of course, if you missed any of the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports, or you'd like to check out the podcast or listen live to my radio show, you can do that at ericasher.com as well. Special thanks again to our guests, Rene Nadeau and Rick Gaille, also to the WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Kenny Juneau, and of course my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll see you right back here next Thursday night. Have a great evening, and aren't you glad that football is back?
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation, Natels Air Conditioning and Heating, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home, and Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House.